As always, the reference video will be in the description. For reference, please view not as an absolute guide, but more like a textbook. The reason for saying this is that the first part of today's video is from the JP server meta. I'll mention this again in the video summary, but as a Korean server player, we saw a very different meta unlike from the JP server. We will talk about the difference of this meta later. After the long 3,200-meter Gemini Cup, we are now facing a race half the length, the 1,600-meter mile race, the Cancer Cup. Looking at the race course, the base G1 race is Yasuda Kinen. We are back to running on the Tokyo Racetrack, which is a left-handed course, and the season is summer. Note that the condition is not firm this time, it is good, so be careful not to use passive skills that relate to a firm track. One nice thing to know is that Takarazuka Kinen gives you the summer passive skill. So when you're grinding for sparks, running this race might help you pick up this passive skill. Another feature to note is that since the conditions are good rather than firm, you'll need a little more power and stamina than you would for a firm racetrack. Moving on to the 2D version of the racetrack, from now on, we'll focus on the important parts. The late race corner is quite short this time. That means skills like Let's Pump Some Iron or Thanos Ult have a small time frame to activate. If we miss this opportunity, we can activate these skills. With the final straight coming out right after, our skills like straightaway spurt or encroaching shadow could work, but honestly, they're just a little too slow compared to Ryan's or Thanos ult. Skills related to uphill and downhill are not recommended. Those skills will be more useful in the future, so don't worry about them now. Let us move on to the recommended stats. For those aiming for the platinum titles for the Cancer Cup, here are the recommended stats. You should aim for higher stat than these, as this is just a basic standard to build upon. Players who are really serious about the title will aim for 1200 speed and power. This isn't to say that these stats will guarantee you first place. There are just the basic standards. Everyone who makes it to the Group A finals will have these stats, so it's up to you to differentiate yourself from here. You might be asking, why is the stamina 601 and guts 301? It used to be like 600 and 300, a nice round number. So why is there a 1? I will get that in a moment. Starting with the Cancer Cup, the environment will likely be similar like both JP and Korean servers. This is because after the Gemini Cup was released on the JP server, private room matches features became available, which was not the case on the Korean and the global server. As a result, room matches became very active at the time, and research was done at the rapid pace. In this part, I'll be presenting strategies from the JP server. The updated meta from the Korean server will be in the next part of the video. In the meantime, let's look at the reason for this string stats. We're going to talk about stat thresholds. There are stat corrections that gives a speed bonus when a specific stat exceeds a certain value. For each racetrack, one or two types of stats correspond to a bonus. For example, in the Cancer Cup, this applies to stamina and guts. So if your stamina and guts don't exceed a certain threshold, you won't get that additional speed bonus. So what are those values? You will get a speed bonus for exceeding 301 or 601 and 901. Given that this is a mile race, raising stamina all the way to 901 means you won't be able to properly train for power and intelligence. Reaching 601 guts is also very inefficient because of its low overall efficiency. Therefore, the optimal and minimal thresholds are 601 for stamina and 301 for guts. You cannot receive these corrections from passive skills, What does that mean? For example, let's say your stamina is 561. Setting other variables aside, if you get a passive skill that gives you a plus 40 of stamina bonus, will that be enough to get the speed bonus for 601? No. While you might think that it would apply like if stamina is 601, passive skills activate the moment the gate opens, so they don't count at the stat thresholds. The only thing that can affect is the motivation correction. A great condition increase the corresponding stat by a factor of 1.04. So if your stamina is 578, the highest motivation will raise it to 601, allowing you to get the speed bonus. However, if your stamina is 575, it will be 598, and you won't get the bonus because it didn't reach 601. So you need a minimum of 578 stamina and 301 guts. Here are the recommended skills. First, passive skills should always be specific to the racetrack we are running. Be sure to double check those conditions so you don't pick the wrong passive skills. After you have considered all the other skills, if you have any leftover skill points, consider getting a double circle, especially speed related passive skills. You don't necessarily need to bring a gold recovery skill to complete the race. Some might think a good combination of 400 stamina and a gold skill is a good idea, but I believe it's a waste of skill points that could be better spent on the other skills. It's not really not necessary. We are not running a top 2400-meter or 3200-meter race. Instead of getting a gold recovery skill, it's better just raise your stamina to around 600. If you have to take one, a simple white skill like corner recovery, for example, would be okay. Now let's talk about the speed skills. They're pretty similar to what we have seen before. Most of the general purpose skills are the same. Let's focus on the mile specific ones. Mile Maven or Productive Plan are good, but they have the unfortunate condition of only activating when you are in the lead. The one who can really use this is Merdinsky, but her unique skill activates too early, so it's not very effective. The straightaways and corners of each lane of the corresponding races are classics. If you have skill points left over, you should definitely learn both. Changing gears and shifting gears activate in the middle of the race when in first to fifth place. So while they may not be ideal for late and end, they are great for front end pace. Fixed History and Unyielding Spirits are very reliable. They are good for any position, but their activation condition is based on chasing and entering overtake mode. So note that if a front runner learns it and manages to stay in the lead the entire time, it won't activate. That is why Speed Eater is mostly used for front. It's a very effective debuff and speed skill that steals the speed from the Uma behind you and adds it to your own. Other speed skill like Speed Star, Escape Artist, Professor of Curvature are also good. Look at other options and learn whatever you can. Next, what about unique skills? Which ones are effective? Forefront is definitely Seiyun Sky. Also, if you can get El Contrapasa's unique skill, although its efficiency is a bit low. This is because El Contrapasa's unique skill is a hybrid that raises both speed and acceleration. The performance won't be that great, but even so, it can help you increase the gap by a few more horse lengths. Another reliable unique skill is Overcap's ult for pace. For late and end, Ryan's unique skill is effective because it activates on the late race corner. But again, the corner is short, so it's difficult to activate. But you have to bring it because if you don't bring something like this, there are no other acceleration skills that can reliably activate at that point. Rudolph's all unique skill can be reliable. To summarize, a front can have a Seiyun, El Contrapasa, for pace, Ogre, and El Contrapasa, and late and end could use a combination of Ogre, Ryan, or and Rudolph. Moving on to sparks, basically a distance S is required, but in some cases you might end up with Terp S or positional A depending on your runner. Just think that generally you would be aiming for a mile sparks. So for blue sparks, since the Cancer Cup is a mile race, stamina sparks are less needed. But as mentioned, for the speed correction that comes from the 578 stamina, you might still want stamina sparks depending on your car setup. If you don't want to focus on stamina in the training, a combination of stamina and power sparks is a good alternative. URA scenario sparks are always great, and having some passive sparks is a bonus, but it will be hard to have all of them. So we would say that having the sparks that give you a discount is good enough. Also, if you plan on running up front, try to get a groundwork spark along with some other passive sparks to activate with it. Let's talk about the recommended entries for front. The most likely winning picks are Seiyun Sky and a Smart Falcon. With Seiyun's release, the power of front has increased. However, since the most powerful pace runner is also here in the Cancer Cup, it might be difficult for front runners to show absolute dominance. Still, with Seiyun Sky here is a bit of a relief. You can either use Seiyun Sky herself or bring in a small Falcon to counter Seiyun Sky's unique skill. But either way, you still need to get Seiyun Sky ultimate skill. If you train Same Sky, you know that her training path includes long distance races. For Falcon, you need a Turf Spark. So both of them can be quite hard to train. On top of that, front runners are already difficult to race because you need groundwork. The good news is that Falcon has front runner stability and wet conditions built into her passive skills, so with just a few more like Focus, a left-handed, or Summer Runner, she is pretty much ready to activate groundwork. I mentioned that Smart Backcount can be used to counter Seiyun Sky, but what does that mean? Seiyun Sky's unique skill only activates on the late race corner if she's in the lead. So in other words, if she's not in the first place, her unique skill won't activate. This is where Falcon can act as a lead. Her unique skill increase her speed in the middle of the race if there's someone behind her. With this, it becomes very easy to maintain the lead during the mid race. If they can close the gap, Falcon can hold the lead until the late race. This is a strategy to put a lead on Single Sky. Additionally, if you also inherit Sin Sky's unique skill onto Falcon, there might be a situation where she just leads the race all the way to the end. Now, the pace runners, there are popular choice. El Condorpasa showed a lot of power in the Cancer Cup. Her unique skill is speed and acceleration hybrid that activates when she's in first or second place on the final straight. Is quite powerful. It's even better if there aren't many fronts. Plus, her growth rates aren't that bad, so she can be trained to be very powerful. Since she showed a lot of power in the first Cancer Cup on the JP server, we expected the other servers to be the same. Another reliable recommendation is Overcap. Ogre was almost always decent choice when she was available. Besides them, there are reliable but somewhat ambiguous picks like Sakura Bakshin O, Taiki Shoto, or Daiwa Scarlet, but we predicted that a lot of El Condor Pasa would appear. Moving on to late runners, they haven't been very strong in the past two champions meeting, but in mile races there are more late race acceleration skills than for other positions. While they wouldn't be stronger than front or pace, they were used as a lottery ticket with a lot of luck. You sometimes see a late runner win with a perfectly timed acceleration skill. We would get these acceleration skills and hope for them to all activate at once during the late race. Possible choices would be Balkan and Grass Wonder, but we lean more towards Grass Wonder. This is because she has on your left built in her skills. We then only need to take the Power Overcap card and inherit a Furious Speed from her, which makes for a balanced strategy. Note that debuff strategies like using Evil Nice Nature wouldn't be good this time, so try to use 3 aces instead. For the end entry, Encroaching Shadow and Straight Ray Spurt would activate a bit later than Seiyun's or Ryan's ultimate skills. Tyson would be our end runner candidate with pure speed and Ryan's unique skill. You could say that this is the same or a similar plan to what you do for the late position. The key is to maximize acceleration. For all the Umas I mentioned, the ones who train for the long distance races will need to carefully manage their stamina for mile races. If you're not careful, you might end up using a lot of alarm clocks and failing training. Now, for the recommended support cards, there are other cards you can use as you wish. Now that we are pointing where people are finally taking with training, a topic since the game's release, it's time to pay attention to it, especially since the stamina requirements are low. Starting from the left, we have SR Daitaku Helios. You can get many mild skills and good skills like Speed Eater. It's a reliable SR card. Power SSR Overcap gives you a period speed, mild skills, and groundwork. So you can also use her to grind for the groundwork spark. For with cards, there's no one better than Fine Motion right now. SR Marvelous Sunday is also a reliable card. To summarize, on the JP server, the most effective picks for the Cancer Cup were El Contrapasa and Grass Wonder. We didn't see many situations where a front runner led all the way to the end. Pace runners almost always won, and sometimes Grass Wonder would win with random acceleration skills like on your left or Furious Speed activating at just the right time. Therefore, even if the front runner tried to get away, a pace runner would likely catch up quickly. For Cancer Cup, you need to know about these three things. You should aim for mile S, at least 578 stamina for the speed bonus, and late race acceleration skills. Now that we learned what it was like on the JP server, you might be wondering what happened with the Korean server meta. In the next part, let's find out how the meta changed on the Korean server compared to the JP server. Now we are going to into new recommendations for the Cancer Cup. We'll see how the Korean server meta has changed. The first, the recommended stats have slightly changed into two parts. For front end pace, using speed and width decks are considered. Notice that we'll be focusing on having more width rather than more power. For late and end, speed and power training are recommended. For this case, more than 450 width is recommended. But if you already have 1200 in both speed and power, try to get as much width as possible. We'll talk about this in later slides, but for late and end, having maximum speed, power, and width is going to be crucial. Here are the updated entries for front. In the parallel universe, we discussed how a smart Falcon was only used as a lid to block Seiyun Sky, with Falcon herself not being considered as a strong ace. However, things were different on the Korean server. Players had sufficient knowledge and time to work on grinding sparks, especially for the smart Falcon. The result was the birth of a smart Falcon ace, who could even aim for a direct victory. However, this Ace Smart Falcon strategy had a major drawback. While it offered a high chance of victory, training her was extremely difficult. The strategy required her to activate skills in a specific order and maintain first place from start to finish. This meant there were a little room for compromise on either skills or stats. If you train her poorly and fail to activate angling and scheming in the final stage, you were guaranteed to lose without a glimmer of hope, which wasn't the case for other positions. Furthermore, for users who didn't own Seiyun Sky, they faced the problem of having to inherit Seiyun's ultimate skill at the grandparents level, which consumed all their daily rental chances. On the other hand, for users who didn't have Smart Balcon, some tried to use Sakura Bakshino as a substitute, as she also has a stable mid-range speed skill as her unique skill. But this option came with the added disadvantage of having to make sacrifices in your support card stack compositions, which made the training difficulty even higher. For the front, Seiyun's and El Condorpasa's unique skills, along with groundwork, were essential. It was also advantageous to have a lot of mid-range speed skills. Since the activation of these skills were crucial, it was determined that speed plus with deck would be more helpful for training a front runner. For the pace, the Korean server had already heard how powerful El Condor Pasa could be when there were few front runners in the race. Therefore, if players decided to use a front, they would typically use two or more as pacemakers to specifically counter El Condor Pasa. It was so common that it wasn't unusual to see six or seven or more front runners in a single race. In this kind of situation, El Condor Pasa had too many front runners to overtake on her own to activate her unique skill. As a result, she frequently failed to activate her skill and would simply fall behind. This is why El Condor Pasa, who was so dominant on the JP server, wasn't nearly as effective on the Korean server. Using El Condor Pasa was a strategy reserved for a specific situation. For players who didn't have either the same sky or a smart Falcon, this was their only stable winning strategy, which speaks to how overwhelmingly powerful the front runners were in this Champions meeting. In these cases, the most common team compositions were one pace plus the two late, or the one pace and one late and one end, with El Contrapasa as the ace. The strategy was to use El Contrapasa to win directly if the opponent has a few or no fronts, just like on the JP server. If there were many front runners, they would rely on other late or and Umas such as Vodka, Grass Wonder, Reginald Ryan, or Naita Tyson to act as a backup plan with skills like Let's Pump Some Iron leading the charge. While late runners didn't see much change, the overwhelming strength of the front runners meant that they shifted from being a definite ace to more of a backup plan. They commonly took mid-race speed skills, and unlike front runners, relied on luck for their skills to activate perfectly. This allowed them to focus more on raising their power. Similarly, there were no significant changes for the end runners. The only added challenge was the difficulty of catching up due to the powerful front runners. Now we'll look at the recommended compositions. First, we'll look at the strategy to send out three front runners. We've already talked about Seiyun and now the now viable Smart Balcon as a contender. And you might be asking, why is El Condor Pasa, a pace runner, listed as a front here? It's a ironic situation that arose from the strong front meta, which made it harder for her unique skill to activate. In response to this, a strategy emerged to use L herself as a front runner. However, this strategy has a painful drawback. Her front aptitude is an E, making it extremely difficult to find the necessary sparks. She also lacks mid-range skills among her default abilities. Because of this, the general consensus was that the results didn't justify the effort. Therefore, this was a very high difficulty strategy that requires a lot of preparation. While we don't highly recommend it due to the need for separate factors for a small balcon who requires many third factors, and El Contrapasa, some players with a powerful will to absolutely secure the lead did use this three front strategy. Therefore, a more powerful and manageable team composition was to send out two fronts. And since it was already established that sending out a debuff runner was not very effective, the remaining slot was filled with a late or end as a backup plan. A prime example for a late runner would be Grass Wonder, while a typical end runner would be Naruto Tyson. Of course, even with this composition, it was still quite difficult to get a satisfying result from the two front runners in terms of stats and skill. It was difficult. The win rate was absolutely stunning. However, it was definitely easier to train than the three front compositions we just discussed. In the cases where you don't use any front runners, the strategy is to use El Contrapasa as your pace runner and team with her with one late or one end runner. Not having to train a front runner makes it much easier to manage. Finally, a team that completely avoids both front and pace runners is one of these three late and end runners. The entire goal of this team is to try to maximize the activations of Major Alliance unique skill. While this strategy might be easier to train, it's hard to call it powerful, especially given how strong front runners were expected to be in the Cancer Cup. We've seen in the parallel universe that El Contrapasa and Grass Wonder were powerful. However, in this world, we saw that Smart Falcon and Seeing Sky were the truly dominant forces, and the front strategy became the meta. I'd like to add one more element to the three factors I asked you to remember before. You should acquire a large number of mid-range speed skills. In situations like with Smile Falcon, well, you need to get turf factors instead of mile sparks. It can be burdensome to get both at the same time. Therefore, I'd like to conclude this video by saying that the burst factor, getting Mount S, can be given a lower priority than the other three depending on the situation. That's it for today. We are very curious what meta the global server will be following. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.